I'm here with the delivery. Henry Flakes announced the moment he barged into the top-notch eatery in the city, panting heavily from the run. In his hands he held a parcel. A woman wearing black shirt and white tulip skirt replied, "And as usual, you're late." She looked at him from head to toe and her face crumpled. "Why do you look like you came from a place filled with dung? Are you trying to irritate our guests?" She felt irritated as her hands flew to block her nose. Henry looked down on his clothes and sighed. While rushing to make the delivery, the muddy water on the road splashed on his shirt, staining it and making him smell. He turned around and saw that even some customers in the eatery were casting stares and covering their noses with their handkerchiefs. It wasn't his fault, actually. Every morning, he had to wake up early and do all the house chores in his in-laws' house for them, which took hours considering the large size of the house. Therefore, he was late and had to drive roughly to bring the parcel on time. He bowed his head in shame and said sadly, "I just wanted to deliver this. Let me have it." The receptionist snatched the parcel from his hands. "You should have just given it to the boss over there and left." Henry's eyes trailed the location her fingers pointed to and saw the boss, Ryan, seating at the corner. He was seated with a woman, like it was an occasion, as they had their meal. They both dressed in white and red. She might be his wife, Henry thought and smiled. She was lucky. He wished he would have romantic moments with his wife, Clara, like this. Clara had been asking him to take her out to this restaurant for the longest, and he had been working really hard to afford it. Clara Wilstone was her full name, the only child and daughter of the late Charles Wilstone. After his death, she was inaugurated and became the owner of the family business, the Wilstone Group, and he has been trying to support her from the back even though she saw him as a failure. The Wilstone Group began to flourish so well that it is ranked as one of the richest group in the province. Maybe because it wasn't easy for her to manage the business, that's why she was a little rude to him, insulted him all the time, made him wash her clothes even when there's a nanny, made him sleep outside most times. Yeah, maybe. And he is willing to exercise patience for her to change as long as she loves him. He smiled and brightened with a ray of hope. Henry snapped out of his thoughts and began to leave. However, a voice he heard made him stop. "Ha! Oh my love, you're such a flirt." The woman with the boss softly giggled. Henry frowned. Why did that voice seem awkwardly familiar? Wait. He flipped his head back only to catch them kissing deeply and passionately. From the side view, the face appeared to be even more familiar. He walked closer to their table and his fear came to pass. It was his wife. Not some other lady, but his own wife. The helmet in his hand fell off and resounded on the floor. "Clara!" He couldn't help but yell her name as she flinched and noticed him. Her eyes dilated and she froze. "Henri, what are you doing here?" Her reaction alone was the summary of everything. Clara was having an affair with Ryan? "I should be asking you." His eyes went to Ryan, who had his brows raised. "What are you doing here? With him?" I. Clara stood up, innocently trying to explain herself. She was equally shocked to see him there. Wasn't he supposed to be at work? Why coming to spoil her blissful day? She threw a glance at Ryan, who was also standing up in confusion. "Let's talk outside." She grabbed Henry's arm to take him outside, but he didn't budge. "Talk about what? About you cheating?" Henry barked in a hoarse voice, his eyes turning red from extreme anger and heartache. Tears stung at the corners. "What is going on, babe? Who's this?" Ryan stood up, visible creases on his face showing he was in his mid-30s as his hair flowed down his back. He glanced down at Henry like he was an unwanted pig. "Oh, don't tell me it's your worthless husband you always talk about? Damn, he smells." He laughed in mockery, causing Henry's anger to boil more. The customers did not help matters as they were still waving their noses and making sounds of disgust. Henry shot him a deadly stare. He balled his fists and swung it to give Ryan a punch. "Don't dare touch my man." Clara stood in front of him. With shock, Henry withdrew the punch. "Your man?" he asked, eyes as red as flames. Clara threw her face away and grabbed on Ryan's shoulder. "You heard me right. So, Cheating on me is not enough, you're defending him right in my face? Clara, what did I ever do to you? She hissed. Why should I even explain it to someone as narrow-minded and poor as you? Of course, you can never see the brighter side. For months now, I've been asking you to take me out to this restaurant, but you've been coming up with excuses. Guess who has done it countless times? Him. I don't care. She folded her arms and tore her gaze from his. You heard her right. Ryan wrapped his arms around her neck. Henry's world collapsed right before his eyes. The shock pierced through his heart like 1,000 knives. His head was spinning, and the only thing he saw was two shameless adults in front of him kissing passionately. He took steps back, then rushed out to his delivery bike. He couldn't believe his eyes and ears. Though their marriage was arranged, he still loved her desperately. Wait! Henry, wait! Clara ran after him. What do you want from me? He glared at her. Stop acting dumb, boy. She began to yell in her highest pitch. Didn't you know that man owns this restaurant? Aren't you happy your wife is dating someone wealthy? Henry, what you almost did was very stupid. Henry felt numb from her quick table turn. She made it seem like he was at fault while she was helping. What did he do to deserve this treatment? He felt weak in the knees and fell to the floor. How could you do this to me, to us? He held her feet tightly. I loved you so much, Clara. What have I done to deserve this? Clara merely rolled her eyes. Enough with the pity face, dude. He gave me all what you and your miserable delivery business couldn't. Live with it. Ryan came out and saw his girlfriend's legs being held. Deeply annoyed, he kicked Henry on the chest. How dare you mess with my girlfriend? Henry, an ulcer patient who had not eaten since morning, felt the pain tear his heart as he coiled up. His heart was burning faster than flames. Ryan shook his head at Henry. I never knew your husband was this pathetic. Maybe if you kiss my toes, I'll make you my restaurant assistant. Clara laughed behind him. Gracious goodness. Henry was pitiful. He's so pathetic, a passerby exclaimed. I pity him, honestly. I hope my child doesn't turn out this way. A pregnant woman also sneered, rubbing her tummy. Henry hated being pitied the most. He stood to his feet and dusted his knees. I'd rather die than kiss anyone's toes. Due to anger, he resorted to a comeback. They wanted to humiliate him. His lips twisted into a smirk and began unbuttoning his shirt. He threw his soiled shirt in their faces, staining their white shirts and enveloping their nostrils with the odor. Without wasting time, Henry got on his bike and sped off. His action left both of them dumbfounded for half a minute. What's this foul smell? Clara cringed. On the road, the thought of her cheating still lingered in his mind. Even if she never liked him or his status, she would have respected her dignity. But unfortunately, she had none. Hold on, he thought she loved him? He recalled first meeting Clara in college, when he had admired her from afar. As destiny could have it, he saved Charles Wilstone from dying due to loss of air as an asthmatic patient with his medical skills. To repay him, he offered him an arranged marriage with his daughter, Clara. They were married for 2 years. Before her father died, she had been acting really nice to him to please her father, but showed her real character after his death. Henry got home after a while and strolled inside the gate to the living room, only to meet his mean mother-in-law, Lucy, and the head maid, Stella. And here comes my useless son-in-law. What happened? Were you sacked from work for being a waste of space? Those harsh words came directly from Lucy, the head of the house. However, Henry didn't feel the pain as he received worse insults within the past 2 years. Lucy was just as bitter as Clara, as they say, like mother like daughter. Just before Henry could respond, Clara excitedly ran in, hugging her mother. She had changed from the dirty clothes into a black dress and boots. Mom, guess what? He proposed, she exclaimed, waving her ring in Lucy's face. Lucy's face brightened. Seriously? You're finally getting married to a human being. Henry's heart tore into pieces. Proposed? His heart raced as breathing grew difficult, bending his head low. The maid, Stella, kept quiet but unhappy with Henry's treatment, as she alone understood him in the mansion. This calls for celebration. Maid Stella, Get us 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne." Lucy grinned in excitement. Her brows furrowed seeing her dress. "Where's your white dress?" Immediately, Clara's face darkened. She took off her boots and threw them at Henry's face. "That worthless pig ruined our date. He even dared to throw his filthy, bacterial-infested shirt at us, ruining our dresses." Henry stumbled as the thick-soled boots struck his head. The point swelled as Maid Stella dropped the glasses and bottle she was holding. She rushed to help him. "Are you all right?" her soft voice asked with concern. Lucy heard Clara and began to fume. Her face turned to the color of ash. "How dare you? You not only bring nothing to this family, but you're now blocking her shine? Tui, you're leaving this house today." She turned to Clara. "Please tell me you brought the divorce papers today." Henry frowned. "What? Divorce papers?" "Yes, of course." Clara brought out a document from her purse, approached Henry and stretched it in front of him. Henry's eyes widened in disbelief. "Can't be." Clara sighed. "This is the end of us, Henry. I'm tired of your miserable life. Sign these divorce papers and get the hell out of this house." "Are you being for real? After all I've done for this family?" Henry felt devastated, his mind messed up. "Haha. Is this supposed to be a joke?" Clara laughed aloud incredulously. "I advise you, you shouldn't say something like that, else you'll be struck by lightning. Look, this thing really thinks he's all of it. What have you done for this family aside being an award-winning burden?" Lucy sneered. "Even the house helps have more value than you. The only reason I accepted to marry you was because of my dad's respect, and he promised to give me the family business if I marry you. Guess who's the new owner of the Willstone Group? I am. The Harvard Malevy Co. and lastly, the Almighty White Group are solidly backing our company. So of what use are you if not a house help?" The insults became too much for Henry, and he couldn't take it anymore. He took the pen, his heart feeling heavier than diamond, signed the papers roughly, then returned it back. This was the end. He was out of her life. Finally, Clara rejoiced like her life depended on it. "I'm free from this pest." She snickered and threw the papers at his face. She went over to hug her mother, but feeling extremely happy at the new change. Their live-in son-in-law was finally out. Henry couldn't believe how evil the family was. Even if he didn't add financially, he sacrificed his time, his energy to work for them each day. He bore the insults. He always gave his salaries from work to Clara and he never once complained. But this is all he could receive. "I have packed his things," a loud voice called from upstairs. It was David Willstone, Clara's heartless cousin who despised Henry for marrying her. "Have your things, dumb head." David threw Henry's bag of clothes down the stairs, ensuring it hit him. "Very soon, I'll welcome a real man as my brother-in-law, not some poverty-stricken soul," David mocked, climbing down with a glass of wine in hand. Henry sighed sadly as he watched everyone laughing and joking about his divorce. How little they understood his pain. He couldn't imagine getting thrown out by the people he came to love as a family. He stood abruptly. "By Henry, it's such a pity seeing you leave. I mean, who's going to watch the dirty plates and clothes?" Everyone burst into laughter, sneering at Henry. "I hope you will see a lady that will marry you for who you are." "No, Mum. I doubt that. Who wants to starve till death?" This statement came from Clara's mouth as he went to pick his bags from the floor. He couldn't find any words, just fixed his bags, slung them over his shoulder and left without looking back. Outside, he leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. Why did they all seem to know about the affair and divorce before him? Did they all plan it together? He got on his delivery bike and drove to God knows where. He couldn't even recall any friend he had to meet. He was lost. As if losing his wife wasn't enough, the bike spoiled and died on the long road. How frustrating could his life get? Just then, Martha, Clara's cousin, pulled up in her car. "Well, if it isn't the pathetic ex-husband. What happened? You couldn't keep your wife satisfied." Maid Stella also exited the house to get groceries from a nearby store. When she saw him, "Henry, are you all right?" Martha laughed harshly. "Are you blind? Can't you see his wife had finally divorced a crook like him?" "Ah, Good riddance, Henry. She laughed before driving into the house. The more the insults compounded, the more heartbroken Henry felt. He realized he was actually a worthless son-in-law all this while.
May the Stella approached slowly.
Don't listen to her, boy. You'll go through with it. I trust you. After saying that, she left. He smiled, grateful for her kindness. Her care reminded him why he liked Stella. She didn't judge like the others. He turned to the bridge and hit his hands on it. Today was just the most painful day of his life. Firstly, he caught his wife cheating, and now he has lost his job. He looked at how high the bridge was as he felt like just ending his life because it was too miserable. He gazed at himself looking at the faded gray top and ripped jeans he was putting on. This isn't how he should live. This phase of his life taught him that it is true what they say, not all that glitters are truly gold. And he had to learn the true meaning of it the hard way. A wave of cold hit him, causing him to hug his arms tightly. He looked up to the already dark sky which seemed like it wanted to rain. He stared up at the tall bridge, the sounds of passing traffic fading into the background. He sighed sadly. If jumping off the bridge would end the misery, then he would, but he knew that he had a future ahead. So he picked up his phone and dialed a number. "I'm at the bridge. Come meet me," was all he said before ending the call and returning the phone. He leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the inky water below. Moments later, dozens of sleek, black Mercedes pulled up in unison behind him. This attracted the attention of some people who were passing on the streets. All the bodyguards came down, all in black suits looking expensive with their black sunglasses as they stood by the car with their heads bowed down to Henry. A man came down from one of the cars in the center. He wore a luxurious outfit made in the Giorgio Armani collection, blue and shiny black LV loafers. He rushed towards him beside the bridge and he bowed his head. "Young master," the man greeted. "It is a great pleasure to see you after all these years. I have passed the test, right?" Henry asked, his hands inserted in his pockets. "Yes, young master. You are officially the owner of White Group now." Henry nodded, a bright smile spreading across his face. As his gaze moved from one bodyguard to the other, he realized that this was the end of the test. He was face to face with his real family. After years of acting like a countryside bumpkin, it was time to return. Henry White was his real name, and he was the son of the late Mr. Reuben White and the heir of the White Group. The White Group was the wealthiest, and their wealth spanned all across the world. Before Reuben died, he promised him that he would get married low-key, as that was a tradition in the White family. At first, he refused the offer, but sooner, he realized that it was actually necessary. It was a chance to go out in the world, see and face the struggles and challenges of being a poor person. He knew with his status, different kinds of women would do anything to get him, so it was better to choose from a humble background. But unfortunately, Clara did not pass the test. Had it been she was still the same way, she would be enjoying the White's fortune. But at least he learnt lessons in the process, and he'd never make such mistakes again. "A room has been reserved for you in a hotel. All the things you need have been taken there. If you feel you're not ready to return home, you could lodge there for the night," Clifford, the man, told him. "And remember that you have to be careful out there. We still believe that late Master White's killer can be anyone," he further warned. Henry nodded and entered the car at the front after it was opened for him. But he stepped down with one of his legs outside. "I have a job for you," he said. "Just say it, young master, and it will be done." Clifford bowed. "Remember when I asked you to invest in the Willstone Group and make sure they are our top priority?" "Yes, master," he replied. "Good. I need you to blacklist the company. They don't need our help anymore," he ordered with a stone-cold face. "Yes, master," Clifford answered. Since Clara got so proud of her little business that was only doing well because of his help, he would make sure it crumbles. All the time, he was secretly using the White Group to back her company, and they thought it was by their power. "Should it also include the Harvard and Malevide company?" Clifford questioned. "Yes, plus those two companies," he responded. The White Group personally owned those two companies also, the Harvard and Malevide company. They were a force to be reckoned with. There was no one in the city that didn't know the White Group or heard of it. He really missed his dad even though he was strict to him. He taught him more than half of what he knew, all his morals and how to defend his enemies. So, young master, when do you wish to show yourself as the new owner? Clifford asked the pressing question of the moment. Henry took a long, deep breath. Until I find out who killed my father and pay back. After saying that, he slammed his door shut, started the car, and zoomed off. It would be unwise to reveal himself this early as the killer was still lurking somewhere. 4 years ago was the time he started his journey of pretending to be poor. Firstly, he started with his delivery business for 2 years being humiliated by them. Then, he met Clara as his humiliation worsened. Later, he finally reached Glorify Hotel, the most expensive hotel in Green Hill City. Apparently, it was also the most adored in the province, given the fact that only the rich could afford a night in the hotel. It was upscale, enchanting, and offered crème de la crème services for their guests. He came down from the car and strolled towards the main building. When he reached the gate, he was stopped by the security guards who eyed him up and down. Seeing his worn-out dressing, they concluded that he might have lost his way. A fat man walked forward. It seems you came to the wrong place. Wait, isn't that Henry? Henry heard a familiar voice as he turned his side and saw David, Clara's cousin's brother. He walked towards him with a coquettish lady wrapping her hands around his arm. He gave him a stunned look like he wasn't expecting to see him at a prestigious venue. He began to laugh. What the hell is this crook doing here? Henry ignored him. After all, he was not living with his stupid sister anymore. Was he? He could see that the lady with him was his girlfriend, or at the very least, his floozy, and she was whispering something into his ear. He didn't need anyone to tell him she was gossiping about him. They both laughed. Henry gave a cold snort. He turned to the hulky guards blocking the hotel entrance. I have a reserved room here. A reserved room? David cut in with a look of fake, taunting shock. Did you sleep on the wrong side of the bed today to have such hallucinations? The security guard who recognized David as from the Willstone family instantly asked, Do you know him? Of course, he was just thrown out to the streets a while ago. He turned back to Henry. If you're looking for where to sleep, just tell me. Green Hill Psychiatric Center welcomes people for free. The girlfriend by his side let out a melodious laugh, casting a disgusted look at Henry. Honestly, I think you should go there, 'cause you look like you belong there. Henry began to boil out of anger, his face ash. It turns out she was twice as stupid as her boyfriend. Security. Trust me when I say you should throw this guy 5 miles away from the compound of this prestigious hotel. He can't afford to cross the gate, not to talk of affording a room. He sneered in contempt. The guards eyed Henry with doubt in their eyes. David actually made sense. 'Cause how would a lowlife like him reserve a room? The taller guard even gave him a dirty look. With all due respect, young man, please leave. He said. What? Henry just couldn't believe it. He was just on his own, when this idiot came from nowhere and began saying trash. Could the Willstones let him be? I said I have a reserved room and you're pushing me away? I bet you will regret this. PFFTT. The shorter guard burst into a loud laugh. Regret what? I'll regret nothing, you tiny flip. Even if he was just a guard, he could easily decipher who was rich and who wasn't. And this man didn't look like it. Besides, he had the backing of David Willstone from the Willstone Group. Henry was feeling stressed from the drama that occurred during the day. Therefore, he had no strength to exchange words with a guard. He took out his phone and called Clifford. They won't let me in. Didn't you tell them I was coming? Henry lashed out. What? That is impossible, Clifford raged. Pass the phone to them this minute. Henry thrusted the phone at one of the quaking guards. You can speak to him. The tall guard frowned before placing the phone to his ear. Hello. Are you on drugs? Do you know who's standing before you? Clifford erupted as soon he spoke. The tall guard gazed at Henry with fear. No. Then allow me to introduce you to the esteemed Mr. Henry White. Yes, Mr. Henry White. And if you don't let him in tonight, I swear you'll be fired and never find a job in this city. You pile of waste. The call ended and the guard nearly collapsed on the floor, eyes watery and body trembling. Forgive me, young master. I don't deserve to lick the dirt from your boots. I even deserve death, but please, spare me. David was at a complete loss. What are you doing? You just bowed to this country bumpkin and called him young master? Are you mad? Who the hell are you calling a commoner? The guard shouted, anger building up in his tone due to frustration. This idiotic man shouldn't let him lose his entire existence. Henry scoffed, pinched his brows, and winked at David. David was in a daze and kept staring in confusion. What was going on? He asked himself. With a shrug, Henry excused himself and found his way into the hotel. The guard quickly bowed and screamed, I hope you enjoy your stay here. Henry enjoyed watching the scene playing out and the stupid shock on David's face as he played mind games with him. This was just for now. How greater would the shock be when they discover he is the most powerful in Greenhill City? He strolled to the receptionist as he stood on the line. Then he shot his gaze outside. Still outside, David furiously asked, So, you can bow for the less privileged, but can't do the same for me? The level of disrespect in this hotel. And what was that call? The guard felt like spanking David as he spouted trash. His face was red when he turned to him. Look, mister, if you don't keep shut now, you will see the other side of me. You're asking what the call was about? I'd rather tell it to a rat than to an ill-bred like you. David turned from pale to paler and then to the color of ash as the insults kept coming. He was being compared to a rat. How dare you? Shut it and move in now. The other guard retorted sharply. In his whole life, he had never felt this embarrassed. And why? Because of a riffraff called Henry? Sykes, he was going to frustrate him inside. Even Pink didn't miss out on the awkwardness as her face turned red like an apple. Whatever. Babe, let's go. She grabbed his hands as they went inside together. David clenched his fists tightly as they walked inside. The worst part was how the guard acted like Henry was superior. Like how can his ex-houseboy be treated better than him? What sort of irony was that? Had the world suddenly switched sides and irony became the order of the day? As his mind searched for answers, Pink caught sight of Henry. What the hell is that guy doing on that line? David's fury was interrupted as he paid attention too. Wait, what is Henry looking for there? He whispered to himself. Why does this guy feel quite suspicious? The line Henry was in was for the most expensive rooms which they give special treatment, and that's people with the diamond card. He seems to want to disgrace himself. What a pitiful boy, Pink added as they went to line up at the place meant for the golden card. For the diamond card holders, those rooms cost nothing less than $8 million each, and they received the king treatment. Those rooms are accommodated by big men whose account speaks billions of dollars. And suddenly, a riffraff ruins the whole appearance and vibe by dressing like a cabman. Henry was such a comedian. Who's going to tell this dude here that this line is meant for those who speak money? David blabbed after leaving his line to disturb Henry. Henry felt like giving him a hard punch. He turned back. I actually think someone should tell you that minding one's business is the best way to avoid getting disgraced over and over again. What's your problem if I can't afford it? Once again, David felt like a complete fool. He was legit calling him a busybody, but he would not rest until he won, and Henry was put to shame. You afford a room which costs $8 million? That is hilarious. Can you even afford a bronze room worth $30,000, yet alone a diamond room? Pink chirped in. He ran his hands through his hair as he rolled his eyes and faced forward. He was already so upset. David's voice was so loud that it attracted people's attention, who started looking at him. Some laughed at him, agreeing to David that he couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, others judged him based on his appearance and demeanor. What's he doing here? They whispered. This outburst also attracted the attention of the receptionist, Miranda. As she turned her head sideways, she saw him. She shook her head and walked over to his side. The bright smile on her face twisted into a deep frown. Who let you in at the first place? She asked. David giggled because the question sounded funny. Ha ha, of course it's the dumb guards who let someone like him in. They should be sacked instantly, he said. Miranda rolled her eyes and sighed. This was the main reason for the campaign last week, to tighten the security. If people like him keep getting in easily, the hotel's value would surely reduce. She was about to take a step forward to call the guards, but stopped. She stretched forth her right hand, saying, "Let me see your card. This isn't the bronze line, I think you're mistaken." "I'm not," Henry replied, handing over the diamond card. Not only that, he also handed her a business card. Miranda collected both, giving him a side-eye. But as soon as she saw them, her eyes and mouth opened wide. "Oh my God, you're Mr. Henry!" she exclaimed, covering her mouth as she looked at the card, then looked at him again in surprise. It seemed to him that she had already been informed of his coming and was expecting him. By her expression, she realized he turned out to be the man she was waiting for, though he was dressed like someone from the streets. "Your room is already ready, sir. I'm deeply sorry for my stupid actions towards you," she said, smiling excitedly. She bowed her head and stretched out her hands. "Please follow me. You're not even supposed to stand at the back." She was about to call the guards to take him there, but she stopped and stretched forth her hands, showing him the way. Everyone was surprised by her behavior towards him, both those who had laughed at him and those who had judged him by his appearance. "What the hell?" David exclaimed in shock. "Hey, I think you should attend to me first, not him," an angry man yelled out. "I've been waiting here at the front to be attended to, and you just ignored me. I guess this is how they treat their true customers," David muttered as she gave Henry his keys. Then she noticed something. "Sir, may I please see your card?" she asked David as he frowned and held it up. "I'm sorry, but that's a bronze card, not a golden one. Please move to the next line," she said loudly from a distance. "What? This is golden." He was confused as he looked at the card in his hand again. He ran his hands over his face, feeling embarrassed at that moment. Henry took his keys and room number. He was escorted by one of the guards, not only because he owned a diamond card, but also due to his importance to the hotel. Everyone looked at him in shock, their faces filled with surprise. Henry was overwhelmed, as he didn't know that he had come with a bronze card. With his wild mouth, David had mocked and embarrassed him, not knowing that he would end up embarrassed himself. He looked on as David left the hotel, clearly ashamed as he should be. David looked at how unbothered Henry was, unable to believe it. In his mind, Henry had just gotten lucky and it was merely chance, as there was no way Henry could possibly have such a huge amount of money. When Henry reached his room, the guard opened the door for him. As he entered inside, his eyes opened wide at the sight of the king-sized bed. The chandelier cast a mixture of red and blue lights, illuminating the room with beautiful reflections. The interior alone exuded royalty. It was a truly spacious open-concept area. He took a shower and opened a drawer, finding pajamas inside. Putting them on, he then lay down on the bed. Soon, a knock came at his door. He used the remote control to open it. "Here is your meal, sir," said the staff, dropping it off before leaving. He had truly passed through much in his life. He missed the times when he wasn't pretending to be poor. He couldn't help but wonder if this was how innocent people get bullied, and poor people get insulted just because of their status. To him, the attitude came across as being pompous and idiotic. After all, it's not like they wanted to be in that position, but people being people. The next day, after he took a shower, his phone rang on the bedside table. He picked it up. "Hello," he said. "Someone very important wants to meet you, young master," the caller stated before hanging up. He grabbed a hoodie and sweatpants from the cupboard, wore them, left his room and strolled downstairs, wondering who it could be. Then a message came with an address. After entering a taxi, he tried calling back to ask why they were meeting at the Wildmay Boxing Club, but the phone was switched off. When he arrived, he paid the driver and alighted the car. As he strolled inside, he was drawn to 3 Mercedes-Benz cars parked in the corner. It was the white group car as he saw the logo. Walking over to ask who he was meeting, he saw a lady exiting one of the vehicles. She looked extremely expensive in her mermaid red dress and sunglasses. Everyone bowed as she stepped out. Then she turned to him, removing her eyeglass.
Maid Stella,
He looked stunned to see her there. He recalled that back at the mansion, she was the only one who had treated him like a human and pitied him. We're no longer at Willstone Mansion, so don't call me that, call me Mum. It's been so long since I've heard my son call me that, she said with a smile, opening her arms. Relieved and happy, he hugged her tightly in return. As Henry embraced his mother, Maid Stella, now revealed as the powerful matriarch of the White Group, a plan began to form in his mind. He pulled back from the embrace, his eyes gleaming with determination. Mom, we need to take them down. All of them. The Willstone Group, David, and Clara. They can't get away with what they've done. Stella nodded solemnly, her gaze reflecting both pride and concern. I agree, Henry, but we must tread carefully. They're powerful adversaries. Back at the hotel, Henry met with Clifford and Stella to devise a strategy. As they discussed their next move, a message came through on Henry's phone. It was from Clara. I need to see you. Urgently, the message read. Henry's jaw clenched with anger, but he saw an opportunity. I'll meet her, he said, his voice steady with resolve. Clara was waiting for him in a secluded corner of the hotel lobby, her expression a mix of desperation and defiance. Henry, we need to talk, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Henry folded his arms across his chest, his eyes cold as ice. What could we possibly have to talk about, Clara? You've made your choice. Clara's eyes flickered with fear, but she quickly composed herself. I made a mistake, Henry. I was blinded by greed and ambition, but I see now that I was wrong. Henry's expression softened, but only slightly. And what do you expect me to do about it? Forgive and forget. Clara reached out to touch his arm, but he pulled away. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Henry, but please, give me a chance to make things right. Henry hesitated, weighing his options. Then, with a sigh, he nodded. Fine. But know this, Clara. I won't be played for a fool again. If you betray me, there will be consequences. Clara nodded eagerly, relief washing over her features. Thank you, Henry. I promise you won't regret this. But as Henry turned to leave, a voice called out from across the lobby. It was David, Clara's cousin, his eyes burning with rage. What do you think you're doing, Henry? You think you can just walk away from us? Henry faced David with steely resolve. I'm done with you and your family, David. I suggest you stay out of my way. David stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. You'll regret this, Henry. You haven't heard the last of us. With a final glance at Clara, Henry turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. Back in the safety of his room, Henry met with Stella and Clifford to discuss their next move. It was time to bring down the Willstone Group once and for all. Using the evidence they had gathered, they orchestrated a series of coordinated strikes against the Willstone Group's criminal operations. Raids were conducted, arrests were made, and assets were seized. The once powerful organization crumbled under the weight of its own corruption. But the final blow came when Clara's role in the conspiracy was exposed. She was arrested and charged with conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement. The woman who had once been Henry's wife was now his enemy, facing the full force of the law. As Clara was led away in handcuffs, Henry felt a mix of emotions. Part of him still felt the sting of betrayal, but another part felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and he was free to move on with his life. In the days that followed, Henry focused on rebuilding the White Group and honoring his father's legacy. With Stella's guidance and Clifford's expertise, he steered the company toward a brighter future, free from the shadows of the past. And as he looked out over the city from his office window, Henry knew that he had finally found his place in the world. He was no longer the naive son-in-law who had been taken advantage of. He was Henry White, the rightful heir to a legacy of power and influence. With a newfound sense of purpose, Henry set his sights on the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as he did, he knew that he would never again be caught off guard by those who sought to deceive and manipulate him. For Henry had learned the most valuable lesson of all. In a world of betrayal and deceit, the only person he could truly rely on was himself. And armed with that knowledge, there was nothing he couldn't accomplish.